Hello YouTube, in today's video I'm going to be fitting a Beavertail grip safety to my frame. This is an EGW JEM Beavertail safety, and this is a 1911 builder's frame. I'll be using an Ed Brown 250 thousandths radius jig to do this, and I've already positioned the jig in the Beavertail safety to make sure that there isn't a gap or anything like that between the jig and the safety. And this safety is actually either a 249 thousandths radius or a little bit smaller, I guess, because the jig wouldn't even fit, which is great because then I know that following the jig profile will still allow me to have as gapless of a fit as possible, basically. So at this point I'm going to position the jig in the frame, kind of like that. I want to make sure that the jig is not really all that loose. It is a little bit, there's a little play, but that's not a problem. And then we're going to see how it matches up with the frame. And I can already tell there's probably going to be a slight gap on the bottom between the tanks, the bottom of the tanks, and the Beavertail safety, but that's okay. Basically what we're going to be working on is getting rid of this excess material. So let me reposition the camera, and we'll start filing here. My frame is in the vise, and the jig is on the frame, so at this point we're just going to start filing. So rough cut is done, and right now I'm just test fitting the Beavertail to the frame, and I can see that we got really close, but there's still, I'm looking through the hole here and I'm still seeing the Beavertail protruding into the hole, so we have just a little bit more fitting to do, which is also good. And at this point we're ready to measure our thumb safety pin, which comes in at about 153 thousandths. So when we're using our gauge pins, which I'll be using for this installation, I'll be shooting to try and put the 153 thousandths pin through the hole and through the Beavertail, which will be this pin right here. So first we're probably going to start with 149 or 150 and basically try to get up to 153 by constantly checking the fit and modifying as needed. One of the very first things I'm going to check for before I even start doing fine fitting is to see if the Beavertail trigger stop arm is conflicting with the frame. And right now I see that when it's fully depressed, it is most likely conflicting. You see that? So if I just go and start fitting and the trigger stop arm still conflicts with the frame, I'll never actually be able to fit the grip safety. That's currently rubbing on the frame, and it's at the very bottom right there. So I'm going to try to touch up this area real quick, make sure that it doesn't rub. Okay. Now I'm going to try and fit again. Try and push the safety in as much as possible. See if the trigger stop arm is still conflicting. And if it is, I'm going to need to address that some more. Very little, because we still wanted to stop the trigger. So then we're going to do another test fit. See if it's still blocking the grip safety. And it doesn't look like it is anymore. What I'll do now is mark my tings with a Sharpie, kind of like that. I'll also mark the area where the trigger stop arm may contact the frame. Make sure that I cover all of my tings here and on the bottom. Alright, and I've already found the pin that fits pretty nicely. So I'm going to drop the beaver tail in. I'll put the pin through, and then what I'll do is basically put a rubber band onto the pin so it keeps pulling the pin towards the front of the rails, basically. So this way I know that the pin is going to be under inward pressure, and then I'm just going to start moving the beaver tail slightly, very gently, up and down. Not too much, about the same amount as it would travel. And then we're going to take the pin out, lift the beaver tail, and see where we made contact. And I currently see only a couple of spots where it really touched. So we're going to take a small file, a needle file probably, and just touch those areas that are marked. So this was one of the areas, and that was the other. And also we touched a little bit here. And I see a little contact here. So now I'm going to reapply my Sharpie. Make sure that I keep my beaver tail clean of shavings. And we're going to reposition the beaver tail carefully into the frame. Put the pin that fits. Like that. And move the beaver tail again up and down. Right now we're going to try and put a different pin through. So this was 148. Now right now we're going to try to put 149 through. 149 now fits. Let's try put 150 through. $150 almost fits. But not really. So let's go with 149 for now. Put that through. I'm gonna use a rubber band. There you go. 150 pin now fits. $151 doesn't fit yet. Then we're gonna go 150. $151,000 now winning. Try and go for 152 thousandths. Too tight. And the reason why this is uneven is because I filed into my jig too much. So you can see on this side I filed in too much into my jig, and that's why that side is not even being touched right now. So I wonder if it'll even work out like I want it to. So we'll see in a little bit. We'll try the 153,000 spin again. And it goes through, tight, but goes through. At this point, we're going to try and position our beaver tail, and instead of using a pin, we're going to try using the thumb safety itself. And we still get a little bit of rub, but the thumb safety fits, as you can see. And when I'm pushing on the beaver tail, let's see, there's still a bit of binding, so I don't want any binding on the thumb safety as I'm turning the beaver tail safety, so I'm still checking for that. Okay. So now everything seems to be fitted correctly, and we can start blending. So you can see I've tied up my beaver tail in the down position, and the way I've secured my frame in the vise is that I've made sure that my thumb safety is pressed down as much as possible. So basically I'm going to try to reduce some of these steps. Obviously the tang's on the bottom, and also the thumb safety is protruding past the frame a little bit. So I'm going to use my 1/4 inch file, round file. Now we're going to clean up a little bit with the Dremel. One side is done. So here's the beginning of blending. As you can see, it looks pretty good. This grip safety actually comes up very nicely to the frame, so there's very little blending on the sides that I needed to worry about. So I think we're actually pretty much done at this point. That's what it looks like to me. And it's looking pretty good so far. So I'll leave the blending of the top until later.